G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Jim Stevenson from Bletchley Group. He's based in Los Angeles, United States. Thanks for your time today, Jim.
Thanks for having me, Troy. It's great to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. Dan from Interview Connections put us in touch. Thought you'd be a great guest.
Yeah, Dan's a good guy. Interview Connections helped me a lot with getting me on introducing me to guys like you.
Tell everybody a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So Bletchley Group is a pure consultancy named after Bletchley Park. The reason that we created the company like that was entirely down to using technology for a business purpose. The Bletchley Park was where they created the Enigma machine. And I love the fact that it was the first technology that we used for that purpose. And I wanted to create a consultancy that used technology for business purposes. It had to have a purpose. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? So Bletchley Group was created.
That's great. So that's 24 years ago now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Long while.
How did you start out?
Just as me. The business has been me pretty much since its inception. I did go through a period, maybe 7 or 8 years into the business, where I hired some people. I found that hiring people was probably the worst thing I could do for my business. For me, I hire people for my clients' businesses all the time. But for me, it just meant that I started becoming a salesman and I stopped doing the job that I enjoyed doing. I stopped doing the job that I loved. So I turned Bletchley Group back into just being me. It's an umbrella for me doing lots of cool stuff with clients. And I work with clients along the way, helping them to grow their businesses. Occasionally I jump in and lead them as CEO or chairman, something like that. But it's predominantly me.
And so how many team members did you get up to at the peak before you decided to go back down to one?
8.
8, yeah. How many years did that last for?
Probably 8 probably didn't even last a year, to be honest. 8 was probably 9 months. I had maybe 5 people for 18 months, and then I just dropped it completely down to just being me. It just became I don't want to say a kind of noose around my neck or anything, because that's overly dramatic. But it became more of a challenge to kind of worry about them getting paid, worry about them paying their bills. And it added a level of stress to me that I just didn't want in my life. Whereas the business just being me, I'm very fortunate. I know what I can do. I know how to help clients. And it just makes life less stressful. I've been really fortunate, actually. The last 18, 19 years, every client I've got has come from a previous recommendation.
Wow.
So it's genuinely just as I moved from the UK, Europe, where my network is really strong, to the US, that I've kind of started doing much more networking events and talking to people and making people aware that I exist and Bletchley Group exists in what we do.
And how old were you back in 2000 when you started the business?
How old was I? Oh man, that's getting into the personal stuff. I'd have been just over 30. I'm 55 now, so what, 31?
31, yeah, great.
It was also a transitional time for me. I just got divorced and moved from Scotland down to London, all that kind of stuff. So it was a big kind of transitionary period for me. And other than getting divorced, which is never good, it was a great point in my life. Moving from Scotland to London, setting up my own business, it was all exciting.
And did you have other businesses before this?
Not really. I used to do a lot of kind of freelancing type stuff, side hustle type stuff. I started out life in construction. So what I did was an awful lot of building surveying stuff. So drawing people's house extensions, that kind of stuff.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the 24 years?
For Bletchley Group, yeah, sure. Bletchley Group obviously started out with nothing. I took the view when I started Bletchley Group that I didn't want to invest significantly in it. So it started off with £1,000. Last year, the year before, I probably shouldn't tell you this because in case the tax man's listening to me. Last year, I think, was an okay year for us. We did about 500,000. Our peak, we've done 1.5 million. which is pretty cool. A lot of the good years though, that doesn't just come from consultancy. It comes from some fundraising and M&A work as well, where you get a bigger chunk of a success fee. That adds nicely onto the mix. But for the consultancy stuff, it's normally about 500,000.
That's good. That's solid. And when was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
For me, succeeded was when I pretty much got. I know we're allowed to swear in this show. When I got the fuck off money,
I
and
love that saying. Yeah.
that was about 4, maybe 5 years in. I was smart enough not to kind of take all the money that I had earned and just spend it and use it and live a lavish lifestyle. I had a really good lifestyle, don't get me wrong, but I managed to save enough that 5 years in, I had the fuck off money. I knew that I could tell a client to just fuck off, and for the next 6 months, 12 months, my lifestyle wouldn't really change, and that for me was success. It was like I get to do what I want. I get to work with the people I want to work with. If I make a mistake and work with someone I don't want to work with, it's not working. Fuck off. I'm out of here. I'll go with work with people that want to work with me, understand the value I bring. I enjoy working with them, and they enjoy working with me.
What does success look like to you?
More of the same, to be honest. I know that's a really, really boring answer, but I have a lifestyle. I split my time between LA and London. I work with people I want to work with. I make enough money that I can have a really nice lifestyle. I'm not poor. I'm definitely not buying big yachts or anything like that. But to be honest, I don't want the hassle of that. So I have the lifestyle that I want. About 20 years ago, along with getting the fuck off money point, I decided that I wanted to design my life, my lifestyle, and I got that. I don't know what more I would kind of want,
Mm. That's
which
great.
is pretty sweet.
Yeah, it is. And number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Marketing a fast growing business, it very much depends for me on what the business is. Services business is very different to product businesses. The key though for me for marketing is to go where your customers are. And a little example of that. One of the best marketing things that we did. I used to work with Bacardi, big company I know, but we created Bacardi Be Live Radio. Bacardi has a whole kind of festival, and it's into the music scene where lots of people drink lots of alcohol and stuff. So we created Bacardi Be Live Radio, and way back in the day, we put it on MSN chatbot. Huge, grew kind of like 1,000% in a week. People found it, people loved it. They were chatting with their friends. When they weren't chatting with their friends, they were just listening to Bacardi, probably in the run up to one of the events they were planning to go to, the Bee Festival or something like that in the UK. But Bacardi Bee Live was all over the world. We had events everywhere. It was really quite an impressive kind of campaign. But go where your customers are. And if that's a B2B thing, go where they are. If that's a consumer thing, go where they are. Find what their pain point is, what their need is. That's what your business should be. And how you market it is you go to them.
And how did you fund the business? Sounds like you pretty much bootstrapped it, mostly services-based business, so not a lot of overheads. You haven't had investors along the way.
No, not in Bletchley Group. I like I said earlier on, I do a lot of fundraising for companies. I do a lot of M&A for companies. So I do fundraising for companies, but Bletchley Group's never been funded other than my own money. The fundraising stuff that I do, I always tell people to be cautious about what you do when you fundraise. Sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of companies out there, they get to a certain level, they've got ambition, they want to grow, and their first view is, I want to get private equity funding. And it's like, whoa, why? What are you trying to achieve here? As soon as you get private equity funding, VC funding, you've got a you've got a boss again. They've got a window. They're 5 years and they're out of there. They want you to be growing as quickly as you can. Every monthly board meeting is going to be pressure, and it's not always the right funding. Sometimes it is. Don't get me wrong. If you got a go big or go home plan, you need the money. VC money is where you go for, but very often you can fund it through friends and family, through debt, or the best money you can get is actually customers paying you. Just go and get more customers. Again, one of the things I tell most of my clients is they undersell. Most small businesses undersell. They don't they sell based on the cost to them, not in the value they give to the customer. So put your prices up. Suddenly you've got 20% more revenue, you've got 20% more profit. That will fund an awful lot of growth without having to go out to the market for VC funding.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. We talk about five growth pillars here at Grow a Small Business. The number one's people, then it's strategy, marketing, funding, and systems. And so we've written an ebook on each of those pillars. And in the funding pillar, pretty much I just brain dumped, all the funding options that I've seen and know of. And one of those is exactly that. You can get, cash flow to grow from your customers, not just with the payment terms, but pricing is usually one of the first places we look because a lot of business owners think I wouldn't pay that much for my product or service, but you are not your market. You've got to let the market tell you what it's going to bear.
Yeah, the market will tell you, but it's also a case that the customers they have a different mindset. They can see the value to them of what you deliver. You're looking at the cost and
Yeah.
trying to put a little bit of market on it. It's a different mindset. It's a whole different point of view.
Absolutely. And the other test to that is running to people. A mate of mine runs like a barbecuing business here in Hobart, does a lot of catering for weddings and etc. And he just, like a couple of times in a row, I ran into him. He just kept complaining about how busy he was. And I said, well, put your fucking prices up. That is a clear indication that you're not charging enough if you're
Yeah.
overbooked. It's just, yeah, but sometimes people can't see it because they're standing in the forest. They can't see the trees.
Yeah, exactly. We've all been there. It's a common problem. You can't criticize people for it, but you can kind of hope that they'll see it and take your advice.
If you were a startup today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
No. Oh no, I'm saying that quite confidently. I don't mind. I do what I love. Don't tell my clients I do a hobby. This is my hobby that people pay me very well for, and I love it for that. I genuinely do. There's a number of people that I work with, I mentor, I help, support because I enjoy what I do. But if I was to start again now, I would go into something more AI related, much, much more AI. AI is coming. I've written several articles about AI in the last 2 or 3 months. I'm very bullish about it. The reality is, and to be honest, ChatGPT 4.0, I think it was released yesterday. A couple of weeks ago, Reid Hoffman did a AI twin where
I
he
saw
interviewed
that.
himself.
I saw that. It was phenomenal, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, even 2 months ago, no one would have predicted that was capable today. I think AI is coming, it's coming very quickly. So genuinely, I think if you're not in AI, if you're not thinking about what AI can do for you and how it's going to transform your industry. So anything I would go into today would be AI based, either automating stuff for small businesses, adding in AI into small businesses. That's kind of where the next 5, 10 years is for me.
Mm. And for the audience, what Jim and I are talking about, if you Google it, Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn, talking to Reid AI. I saw his first video a few weeks ago and the most recent one last week. It is amazing. Him talking to himself, the visual here there of Reid AI, his body language, his mannerisms, everything's just the same as the other Reid. Have you heard I think it came out last year, the Tesla customer service call?
No, I know the Google one that they did in 2018 where they booked a hair appointment.
Hairdresser, that one,
Oh,
yeah. But and this one's a
yeah.
Tesla. It's a live call, and the guy doesn't know. The AI, Tesla's AI, rings. Someone's obviously looked around the website, filled out a form, and rings the dude up. 10 minutes later, and they have this conversation, and he has no idea it's actually AI. You can just tell because there's a slight pause by the AI, which is a little bit unnatural. Apart from that, phenomenal.
Going back to why I called my company Bletchley Group was Bletchley Park was predominantly not just there was lots of really smart people there, but Alan Turing, who
Yep.
created the
Turing
Turing test.
test. So is it
We,
70%?
we're now kind of very close, and you can easily argue we've broken the Turing test or we've passed the Turing test in small examples. We've not done it mass, but we're only 6 months away. We're not 5, 10 years away. We're 6 months away and we've passed the Turing test.
The threshold for the Turing test is 70%, isn't it? That 70% of people would not know that they're talking to a computer.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
And we're there. It's 2024 and we're there. It's exciting. It gets really, I mean, I get really geeky about this stuff. It gets really exciting now.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
There's probably been 2 or 3, if I'm honest, and they're all very different. So probably the early days was before I got to the fuck off money point. You would take any client, and you just had to because
Yep.
you had bills to pay and you do it. And you might not like them, the client might not be there, you get the usual kind of toxicity environment that you're in. Um, you have to do it. You've got
Been
no
there,
choice.
got the t-shirt.
You need to pay. Exactly. We've all been there. It's all that stuff. The other kind of point was I took over the running of a business. It was private equity owned. I won't tell you the name because it's not the best story to be telling when everyone's listening. But I took over a business that the previous CEO hadn't run the company particularly well. So the private equity owners wanted me to do a growth strategy for them, liked the growth strategy so much, asked if I would run the company. I was appointed on the 26th of October in the year I started. And the following week, I fired the CFO because the 3.2 million it was meant to be in the bank wasn't. We had we had to get extra funding to pay the salaries that month. It was a complete mess. That was stressful. That was kind of added to my stress level. And you can tell I've got lots of grey hair. Majority came from that. But it's those things that kind of define who you are. You kind of you dig in, you get there. That company went from a grow and sell story to a turnaround story, and I turned it around in 8 months. We sold the UK divisions of it 6 months after that. So hugely stressful. My wife at the time wasn't particularly best pleased with me. As learning experiences go, that's when you learn. It genuinely is. If everything's going well in your comfort zone, you've learned nothing. It's when you get out of these, you're a bit stressed, you're under pressure. That's when you learn.
Absolutely. Did you say you had a third stressful moment?
Probably yeah, probably working with a client in Switzerland. I'll give you some stats. It was a company that did email commerce, had bought their biggest competitor, tried to merge both of them together. The CTO, he was on an earnout. He came from the company that got bought. He was on an earnout. So his motives were very different to everyone else's. He was looking to make sure everything went okay, got to his earnout, and he was off. And I completely respect him for that. The reality was that I was trying to merge and integrate both those companies together. And I could prove, I did the data, I could prove without any category of doubt, if when we merged the two websites, because it was e-commerce, and when I merged the two websites together, if the first piece of functionality we built was a search engine function, I knew that conversion would increase 2.67%. And I knew that increase in conversion would equate to 2.2 million per annum. And I knew that that 2.2 million increase per annum would pay for the integration costs. So first thing you do, let's put a search engine on this. He was like, no, not doing that. That adds risk. That means that my earnout is at risk. Ain't doing that. Completely respect the guy. But when they bought the company, when they did the earnout, they obviously didn't think of those things. Completely logical. Get exactly where they came from. But suddenly you're trying to integrate something and you've got these very different objectives from the team members, and that adds stress because you know you've got to do the right thing. I actually was in a consultant in that one, and you just know that that's the right thing to do. How do you convince the guy that's actually in charge to kind of do it when he's working on an entirely different agenda to everyone else?
Yep. Right. Yeah. So I assume that didn't go ahead then.
They went ahead, but it went ahead very badly. They walked away from a bespoke platform that they'd spent 5 years building. They had an amazing team who built it. The team was so awesome that actually they got poached by Google. That's how good they were. Google went and poached them. So I think the reality is that one decision to give this one guy the earn out and then the decisions that followed because of that. And again, logic for him, I'm not disrespecting him in any way. That meant that they lost the team, they lost a bespoke platform that was perfect for them. They went on to, I think at the time it was Magenta 1.9, and there's no upgrade past the 2.1. So they moved to an old platform, they had to update it. I reckon that one decision probably cost them in the region of 20 to 25 million
Oh, holy
because
shit. Mm.
it would take them 2 years to rebuild a team. It would take them time to rebuild the platform. It would take them time to get back into the dominant position they were in. Easily in that point, you're 20, 25 million down from where you should have been. And it was a perfectly logical decision that hadn't kind of gone through from if I make this decision today, what will happen in 6 months' time. It's logical today, let's do it. But they hadn't thought through the entirety of that decision-making process. And yeah, I think it was easily 20, 25 million that would have cost them. I don't honestly know what the figure was. I didn't go back, but
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
the least thing, and it's not just fast growth, it's the least thing I hate ever is sales. I'm terrible at sales. I don't sell myself particularly well. The benefit I have, and one of the really good things I have was I had a mentor when I set the business up, a guy called David Robbins, just to give him a shout out and some credit. And he was an awesome sales guy. Genuinely, he was just a natural at it. He didn't sell. He was just naturally getting people to buy things from him. The lesson I learned from him though was not to sell. It was to sell without selling. You find clients that need your service, you explain to them what you can do to help them. And if what I can do to help them is something that they want, they'll buy from me. I didn't really need to do the sales. And I just followed that method all the way through. And I've been really fortunate that, like I said at the start, the last probably, I don't know, 17, 18 years, every client I've had has come from a recommendation, either a previous client or a previous client's gone into a new company, or a friend that I've mentored has kind of helped and kind of say, oh, my new company can help here. And it's been amazing. And don't get me wrong, that's a double-edged sword. It genuinely is a double-edged sword. It's great the fact that I have that reputation amongst the people I've worked with, but moving from the UK and Europe into the US and trying to kind of expand this market, I don't have that network. So now I have to kind of go and talk to people.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I don't think there's anything to manage that you enjoy least about it. It's just an exciting environment to be. Probably stress levels. The fact that every day isn't an 8 hour day. You're not going to leave on Friday at lunchtime and go play golf. It's full on. But my nature very much is I'm a bit of a workaholic. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy that vibe. So I don't think there's anything I dislike about fast growth. I think it's great.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
The beauty of small business, and this is a genuine thing, it doesn't really matter what you're in, is small businesses force you to be creative. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of resources, you've got a big target to get to, you've got to be creative in it. I remember working with a big retailer in the UK, and this is insanity, and I'm not for 1 second suggesting it's anything other. They had 650 million pounds worth of projects in flight. They said yes to everything. Doesn't matter what crazy idea they came up with. We've got the budget. Let's just do it and see what happens. With small businesses, you don't have that. You've got to be really focused. You've got to understand what you're doing. You've got to be creative. You've got to come up with new solutions for old problems. You've got to kind of have that creativity in that process. Otherwise, you're burning through your runway and you're not getting anywhere. I think it's slightly different if you're a profitable small business. You can get away with doing some of that stuff before it bites you in the bottom. But if you're a small startup business, you've got funding, you're cash flow negative, you're burning through your runway, a couple of bad decisions, and suddenly you're kind of going back to your venture capital bosses and saying, "We've run out of money. Can you give us some more?" And that's not a comfortable conversation to have.
No, certainly not. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I don't think this is a small business thing, but it's easily been the biggest mindset shift that I've ever had in my professional life. I, I used to manage projects for clients, and projects is great. There's a methodology. You go through a project, you have a start and end, you kind of figure out what you're doing in the middle, you run through it. As a project manager, you feel like all the responsibilities on you, so it's stressful. The biggest mind shift I had was when I moved from project management into agile management. It was no longer on the project manager, it was on a team. It was no longer on delivering a task by task thing, making sure the team ticked off the boxes of the tasks that you needed them to do. It was how do we get to this outcome? So it changed fundamentally from output focused to outcome focused. It changed from project manager trying to drive a team of 10, 15. I manage teams up to 300 people. And you're trying to get every one of those guys and women to do a task to add into the whole. And it was just stressful and it was a nightmare. And the vast majority of them fail. Whereas with the agile mindset, suddenly everyone's pulling in the same direction. We all know what we're trying to get to. Your conversations aren't, is this where we're going? It's how's the best place to get there? And that fundamentally changes a mindset. And since then, I learned those lessons probably 20 years ago when I worked with The Guardian. One of the things I did was launch The Guardian into the US, and we used that mindset, that agile methodology to get there. It was a huge shift change for me. And the reality is I've now implemented it across dozens of different businesses, across product development, across marketing, across technology, across entire organizations. I've developed business strategies using agile methodologies. It's just as a fundamental change in how you think and how you progress. There is nothing that beats it. And there can never be anything that beats it because it is so collaborative. Everyone's on it, everyone's in the same place, and it changes the culture as you go.
Yeah, from memory, it started really gaining momentum in the late 90s. It certainly wasn't in my university classes. One of my degrees is computing, and we taught the waterfall method, etc., but no mention of agile. And soon after I got out, agile was popping up everywhere. And you're right, it's now it started in IT, but it's gone into other facets of businesses, that agile methodology, which is 90-day sprints, small teams working together, iterating, looking for small wins, testing before you move on to the next. Doing 18 months of big work and realizing the customers don't fucking want that.
Yeah, completely. I cannot go past it. I mean, it comes. I think most of it comes out of the lean Toyota production methods, and then it moved into agile for software development. I forget what the lady's name was that actually kind of did the conversion for it. Then Steve Blank did a lot of research on it and how you worked it. And then Eric Ries wrote the book based on Steve Blank's research, and he got the fame and fortune from it from his book. And then everyone started using it, and it's just second to none. Again, a big company example rather than a small company, but it's equally valid. I worked with Marks and Spencers in the UK, and they wanted to kind of change this whole way of working. So I helped them restructure it and form the teams and things. But before I could get them to buy into it as an entire organization, they were really skeptical of how this would work. So I worked with six of their guys, not my guys, not previously worked in this way at all, six of their guys. And we worked over 2 week sprints. We worked 4 2 week sprints. And what we worked on was the e-commerce iPad version. They were rebuilding their website on their own platform, taking it away from Amazon. And they'd completely forgotten about redeveloping the iPad as a separate thing. So we did some consumer research, and we could prove without a shadow of a doubt, if they went live, the iPad version would drop conversion by 1%. And at that point, that was 300 million a year. It was a lot of money went through the iPad. Marks and Spencer's customers liked Apple. They were very akin. So I took six of their guys, 4 2 week sprints, 8 weeks. And at the end of that period, I could guarantee, because we did the customer research again, conversion would increase by 1%. So a 2% delta over six of their team over 8 weeks, 6 million a year, just using this methodology of everyone was in this together. We're trying to figure out what it is. The iPad version isn't working. We want to improve on it. What's the best thing we can do to improve on it? Everyone got to a say in it. It was all very collaborative. And six guys essentially made Marks and Spencer 6 million a year over that week period. It's very powerful when you get into that. And like I say, small companies can pick up on that very easily. It's not rocket science. You can pick up and you can have the same success. You don't have to be a big company to get that kind of success with this.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Ooh, a growth mindset. Every time. A growth mindset. I firmly believe, and don't get me wrong, I write an awful lot of strategies for clients. But I think it was the editor of Harvard Business Review. Oh no, it was Peter Drucker who said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast."
I love that saying.
100%
Yeah.
bought into that completely. I can give you the best strategy in the world, but if you've got a mediocre culture, it's going to be a mediocre strategy. I can give you a mediocre strategy, and with the best culture, you're going to have the best company. It just fundamentally is true. And that culture comes with a growth mindset. How can I be better tomorrow than I was today? How can I help my team to be better tomorrow than they were today? That growth mindset is unbeatable.
Are you a small business owner? You know that getting recruitment right can make or break your team's success. Just one mishire can cost your business up to 27 times their salary. Finding and retaining top talent is a challenge, especially in today's competitive market. That's where our Ultimate Recruitment Toolkit comes in. Over 10 intensive days, our online course is designed specifically for small business owners like you. We'll walk you through the process of sourcing and securing A players for your team. Here's what you'll gain. Learn the proven strategies to pinpoint and attract the best talent in your industry. Access our comprehensive playbook filled with templates and tools tailored to fit your business needs, and apply the resources right away to enhance your recruitment process and streamline hiring. Invest in your business's success by helping your management team become effective recruiters. Supercharge your hiring process today with the Ultimate Recruitment Toolkit, available at growasmallbusiness.com. Now, I know it's a short-lived chapter in your business of having up to 8 team members, but can you talk to how you added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Sure. Adding people to the team, lots of people talk about creating teams. They talk about hiring into teams. I tend not to. I talk about shaping teams, because a team has a shape. And if you think about it as the kids' game, where you've got the kind of the round piece of peg goes into a round hole, the square one goes into a square hole. Depending on what you're trying to achieve with that team, there's a shape that that team needs to be. And that team doesn't just need to have special skills. It needs to have special culture. You can't have a soccer team that's all Pele or all Messi. You've got to have some backs. You've got to have a goalie. You've got to have midfielders as well as the strikers. So I talk about shaping teams. And once you actually understand that concept, you can then start to see what shape your team should be, and what the skill set and the mindset and the attitude and the team needs to go together. And sometimes you'll have in that team someone who looks completely useless. It's like, what is that guy actually doing? And very often what you find is that guy's the glue. He's the one that's keeping everyone together. He's the one that's kind of motivating them. He's the one that's been the diplomat when there's a disagreement. So the shape of the team can be anything. But you need to shape the team for the size of challenge you're going to put the team against.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth? Not just, I guess, not just your team that you had for that short time, but you would have seen a lot of cultures around the businesses you've helped.
The one thing for me for culture is every company has a culture. There is no company in the world that does not have a culture. The challenge with culture is whether you choose to create the culture you want or you accept the culture you have. I always create the culture. Culture is not a difficult thing to create. The challenge with creating a culture very often is that managers and the leadership team think the culture doesn't apply to them. So it's something the guys doing the hard work should be doing. We should get a culture for them. But of course, I'm outside that culture. I get to do whatever I want. So for me, the culture has to be through the entire organization, which means the intern, the guy that's been in your company for 6 weeks, 6 months, should be able to go to the most senior guy and say, I don't understand that. Why did you do that? What was that decision for? And obviously, you can't be distracted every day with that, but that's the culture you need to have. You need to have everyone accountable. You need to have everyone empowered. You need to have everyone aligned. And suddenly what you'll find is just empowering people, allowing them, like I said earlier on, to focus on the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. Suddenly that fundamentally changes your culture. For clients, I've been asked to do agile transformations, digital transformations, structural transformations, organizational transformations. Every one of them is a cultural transformation. Every one of them.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Balance. I like balance. Balance is probably one of my favorite words in businesses. We often talk about win-win. This is actually an article that I've drafted and I've not finished and published yet. But we often talk about win-win, and the problem with win-win is it includes the word win. And as soon as you've got win in there, there's one side that's always kind of sneakily trying to think, I'll get one up, I'll get a slightly better deal out of this. For me, the balance in an organization though has to be whoever you're employing, you have to pay them a fair salary for the work they're going to do for you. If you've got a supplier, you need to be fair to the supplier. The number of times that you see organizations employing a marketing agency or any kind of supplier, and it's like, I want to get the cheapest price possible, but I want to double your scope without telling you I've doubled your scope, because then I have to pay you for more. And that balance just goes straight out the window because people aren't understanding it. For me personally, with my clients, I've always been upfront. If I have to chase you for my invoice at the end of the month, I'm no longer focusing on building your businesses. I'm focusing on making sure I get paid. You want me focusing on your business. So the balance for me is I'll focus on your business if you look after me and make sure my invoice is paid at the end of the month. But it's the same for everyone, whether you're an employee, whether you're a supplier, you want to find what that balance is so that you're both aligned and then make sure you adhere to that balance. If you say to a supplier, because it's very often and it's normal. Some suppliers will say to you, I can't give you 30-day terms because it's this, it's that. I'm a small business. I can't afford to be your bank. Can you pay me after 7 days or can you pay me after 14? If that's what you need to do to get that supplier on board to focus on helping you grow your business, pay them after 7 days, pay them after 14. Don't be late. Don't think I'll eke it out by another couple of days or they'll cope until the end of the month. Be fair to them, give them the balance. And that for me is the balance.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Probably none, if I'm perfectly honest. I tend not to do an awful lot of professional development because I learn every day. Everyone I speak to, I learn from. I don't really go through a review process, but it's more in my nature, especially with this growth mindset, which I kind of started learning about 20 years ago. Occasionally, I'll go to a conference if I get a free ticket. I was at CogX in LA last week, which was phenomenal. A lot of AI stuff in there, which was just mind blowing, to be honest. So I learn every day. So do I go out and kind of spend 2 days a month kind of learning about this new thing? I don't. I find most of those things don't help me personally. It's not how I learn. Everyone learns differently. Some are visual, some are audio. I learn much more by reading, by understanding, and then thinking it through and applying it to my own mindset. I know this isn't going to be very popular, but I tend not to read a lot of books. So and I don't read books because I find them a waste of time. I don't want to read 200 pages when I can get 4 or 5 core concepts in 20. So I do the what is it, Get Abstract or Blinkist, or I do those summaries. That gives me the concept, and then I want to think through how I will apply that concept to me and to my clients, and I find that much more valuable. So I do that every day. It's not I don't go. So there you go. It's a Get Abstract subscription. What's that? 80 quid a year. That's my personal development budget.
And have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yeah, like I said at the very start, I had a guy called David Robbins, who was a sales guy, as my mentor. He's probably the only true mentor that I've had. The other person that I've learned most from, and I'm just making sure I'm not being disrespectful to anyone that I've met along the way. But I've learned from most people, and you learn from good things and bad things. I've had so many kind of bad clients, and you learn equally from them. But the digital director at the Guardian, a lady called Tanya Cordray, she was just awesome, genuinely awesome. She was a leader in the true sense of it. She was a lovely person. She was awesome. I remember with the Guardian, we got. Do you know Marty Kagan? He's written the product. He was the product manager for Netscape back in the day, and he's written a couple of books on how you do product development. Brilliant books. We got him over to the Guardian to teach everyone and go through courses and how you kind of go through product development properly and all that kind of stuff. And he was a bit of a god to us then because it was just like, it's Marty's coming. And Tanya organized taking him out for a lunch, and she took a leadership team with her. Although I was self-employed, there was a client of mine. She included me in the leadership team. So there was maybe 10 guys 10 guys, 2 women round the table, and Marty was there. And Tanya, without breaking a sweat, without making it obvious, just very subtly went round the entire table and gave every one of us 15 minutes of fame with Marty. This is Jim. Jim's done this for us, and he did that, and she blew her trumpet because she knew that we wouldn't, and just kind of she gave us all 15 minutes of fame. And I remember sitting there on that day and just thinking, that's a master at work. She could sit there and say, I did this. I got my team to do this. This is what I instructed my team to deliver. And she didn't. She was so graceful. So it was genuinely the best leadership I've ever experienced in my life. And I learned so much from Tanya. Genuinely so much from Tanya. Awesome.
And do you have a board of directors or advisors? I'm guessing not.
I don't know. I sit in a couple, a board of directors and advisors for clients and companies that I run. I run a telehealth business out of the UK. although we've got presence in Europe and in Australia at the moment, trying to get into the US. So I'm a director of that business. We have board meetings regularly, run through that, and I've been advisors on God knows how many businesses, to be honest.
All right, Jim, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think's the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Motivation. I think in any small business, you're going to have problems, you're going to have downsides, you're going to have tough days. And to be honest, if you're running a small business and you're doing it well, your tough day is going to turn into a tough week and it's going to turn into a tough month. And unfortunately, it's probably going to turn into a tough 6 months. Keeping yourself motivated and getting through that. We've all been there, we've all done it. That is probably the single hardest thing. You're thinking, why am I doing this? I could easily go away and get paid more money and just go back into corporate life. It'll be easy, it's regular. That's not why you're running a small business. But that motivation to keep yourself motivated and persevere through those challenging times. Once you get out of it, don't get me wrong, once you get into that fuck off money point, there is nothing better. But getting there's a challenge.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
For books, that probably, I mean, actually, can I be controversial
Go
and
for it.
say no,
Yeah.
not a book but a movie?
Yeah.
And it's a strange movie. I actually advised a client on this maybe 2 months ago. The movie is it Matt Damon, The Martian,
Yes. Mm.
and he's stuck on Mars, and
And he
he
sets that
his
trap, doesn't he?
yeah he's kind of the day he lands and he thinks, oh man, I've got so much oxygen, I've got oxygen for 20 days, I need food, I need this, I need that, whatever it is. And I think what that is a brilliant example of is prioritization. There is no point in a business worrying about what you're going to do in 5 years' time once you've got 10 million revenue if you're going to be bust in a month's time. Focus on the thing that's going to kill you today, the thing that's going to kill you tomorrow or next month. Fix that problem because then you live until you get to the other one. Paul Graham, the Y Combinator guy, he's I'm going to say he's famous for it. He's probably famous for lots of things, but the one that sticks out is a business is either default dead or default alive. And the vast majority of small businesses are default dead. If you do not keep selling, you're dead, you're gone, you have to keep hustling and you're off and running. And because of that, I like The Martian. Focus on the thing that's going to kill you today because then you get to play again tomorrow.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Learning tools, no. Podcasts, probably not. Like I say, I listen to books, audio books predominantly, and it's those get abstract summaries. I do a lot of walking, which is unusual in LA. I walk maybe 3.5, 4 miles a day, just because I enjoy it and the weather's lovely. So why not?
Mm.
I don't see the point of driving everywhere and then spending an hour in a boring gym. I'd prefer just to walk. So I listen to podcasts. Well, not podcasts, those audio books, maybe 2 or 3 of those on a walk in a day, and I just go through them like nothing in earth. I listen to some bizarre ones that I get nothing from, and I listen to all the usual ones. The other one that I quite like is Atomic Habits
James
because it
Clear.
is just yeah, it's just so you wouldn't think about it yourself, but when someone explains it to you, it's like, ah man, the light bulb flashes up. And you're like, yeah, of course, that. Oh, how stupid am I? It's fantastic.
Great book, yeah. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Really depends on where the business is in its life cycle. Tools that I kind of like are actually the tool that every company needs, regardless, is a CRM. And so many businesses try and get away without doing it, and they do it on Google Docs or a sheet or an Excel or something. And just invest in it. It's not a lot of money. You can subscribe to it. It's maybe 10, $20 a month. It's a godsend. Every business needs it. The other one I use daily and I've grown to love is Notion. It's just a really easy one place to have everything. I've got it on my phone, so whether I'm walking in a meeting, I can easily do stuff, update things. So Notion for me is one I love, but every business needs a CRM.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 24 years ago?
This is the dream, to be honest. The whole dream of why I was doing this. Like I say, I called the business Bletchley Group after Bletchley Park. I wanted it to be a consultancy. Embarrassingly, I'll actually tell you, I don't tell many people this. The whole kind of ethos for there was two things I wanted to achieve with Bletchley Group when I started out, and one was to be the McKinsey for the digital age. McKinsey just had the best reputation, and I've worked with a lot of them, and they're really smart. I've worked with some of them, and they're really stupid. But McKinsey had the reputation, but they didn't know digital. They weren't technology enabled in that way. They were just really smart people about business. I wanted to be the McKinsey for the digital age. And I kind of, and along the way, I think I kind of got there. I got the reputation, the quality of work that I did, I made sure was great. That's why I got the recommendations for the last 18, 19 years from previous clients, because they liked what I did. So that was one of the things I told myself. The other thing I told myself, which I failed miserably on achieving, was I wanted to essentially have 5 or 6 people in each of the financial hubs. And Hong Kong was a bit of a challenge at the time when I set it up. So Singapore, New York, London, 5 or 6 people in each location. And the logic of that was purely, I reckoned that with 5 or 6 people, someone could go on a holiday and not take a laptop with them. And that was important. I'm a workaholic. I choose to. I got married and I took a laptop on my honeymoon with me because I work and I wanted 30 minutes in the morning while my wife was still sleeping, had a long lie in bed. I caught up and work, and then I could relax for the rest of the day. I'm just a workaholic in that way. But I reckon 5 or 6 people, you can go on holiday and not worry about it. And I wanted to follow the sun. I wanted to be in those financial centers. And that was really the ultimate dream. I didn't want to create 300 people. I wanted kind of like maybe 18, 20 people, 3 different locations, cover the world, but to be the McKinsey of the digital age.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Jim. I've really enjoyed our chat. Congratulations on the growth over the last 24 years, doing some great work, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot, Troy. It's been great.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.